happy Sunday. You did it, you made it here. So we're so excited to be able to have this moment with you to talk about underwaters and Friends with Computers as a collective, but also hopefully share some knowledge and skills with you as well. Has anyone seen Underwaters yet? Oh, okay. It's interesting, most of you are going to be seeing behind the curtain before you see the actual thing, so that's pretty interesting. Do you have a comment?
I hope you guys feel like you're seeing like a fourth wall break, and but also enjoy the work.
Yes. So Underwaters is the inaugural boorda commission, and of course you are all part of boorda as well in its different facets and forms. And the Immersive Arts Commission is it was a really big privilege to be awarded that commission and to meet the challenge of, I guess, what is immersive. So I think when we're thinking about what immersive art is, we're really thinking about enveloping the audience, speaking to all of the senses, and also to take great care, because immersive art is very powerful, so how do we care for people in that space? And why not go 500 million years in the past, which speaks so beautifully to the name boorda, which is future now, so thinking about time systems and how we can think about spirals, how time overlaps and intersects, and how we can use really cutting edge technology, but also to acknowledge that technology is ancient as well, and that we have the oldest technology here in Australia. Think about those fish traps, you think about tools, all of those things are also technology, so very important to call that out. Underwaters is set in two different environments or sites. So we have the beautiful, lush, blue kind of waters, which we're seeing on screen right now. And as you are propelled through the water and encounter all of these beautiful creatures and plants and systems, a rip forms in time and space, and then you kind of are in this ambiguity of, is it really, really deep water? Is it outer space? It's kind of all of those things at once, all the while inhabiting the form of a shell, which is so beautifully made by Jordan, and I think that you should explain it actually. Do you want to talk about the shell? Because it's a really key part of the interactivity.
Yeah, so the kind of main role the audience has in this work is they embody a shell, and we kind of wanted to represent the person in the world and make them feel like they're part of the world, but also the shell kind of is a bit incognito, like you can kind of go through the world without being seen and just experience it without too much pressure, I guess. But the kind of interactivity is technically it's using 2 depth cameras. So they are these Orbeck femto megas. These things are really good cameras. They're part of a kind of line of technology that's been developing since the Xbox Kinect. I don't know if anyone used to play that, but very cutting edge stuff. And like we grew up playing with that and those kind of kinetic video game tools, and so they've slowly been kind of amalgamated by different companies, and Microsoft obviously built the first one, but this is now Orbeck. And the femto megas are good because they have inbuilt networking, and because we're using 2 cameras, having them communicate with the computer is like an important part. We're using a piece of software which is open source and developed by our very good friend Matthew Hughes. The software is called Pointcaster, and it basically does like analysis on your body, and then we take that data into Unreal Engine, and then I'm using an algorithm from the 1980s, which some researcher, figured out, of how to actually lathe the shape of a shell using mathematics. So yeah, it's kind of this combination of all these systems to create just the sense that you're a shell. And it's hopefully fun to play with as well, and makes you feel a bit goopy.
Did you have something to say? No, keep going. So there's so many, hopefully you have a good kind of base level grounding of underwaters as a work. And given that we have 2 hours with you, we thought it would be most useful to really kind of hone in and focus on one element to kind of show and share how we've explored it, and then, show you how you can do it yourself in a really DIY way. So one of the things that needs to be called out when we're talking about immersive art is that it often calls upon reality. And I think the reason for that is because when we have something that's familiar from our world and we bring it into the simulation or the virtual world, it kind of like hooks us in. But also, I think when we're bringing reality in, it can mean that you do really cool, really special things, because we have treasures in our world. But I would say that treasures from our world should be handled carefully. So that's also something to think about. So working with these different environments, there are some decisions to be made. So we do have 3D assets that we create ourselves. We do have 3D assets which we kind of find and source. And then we also have 3D assets which we photogrammetry scan. So that's a 3D scan, lots and lots of photographs which are compiled to create a 3D model which has the form of the object itself and its colours and textures. Jordan, would you like to help us out? Ground zero, 3D assets, what are they?
Like ground zero. So a 3D asset is basically a collection of points. So every point on the asset is kind of resolved by triangles. And so you take 3 points and you get a triangle. And so that leaves you with a kind of primitive face. And a collection of those faces creates a mesh. And so you can see the kind of shell at the bottom there, the Cenophora, that's actually made up of like 80,000 triangles, 800,000 triangles. Basically each of those triangles is also given a texture or texture coordinates, and the image, which is a texture that gets imprinted on all these faces, is the color. And then you also have things like normal maps, which are like another image which represents the way light kind of bounces off it and is interacting with the lights in the 3D world. So when you do a scan, you're kind of creating all these little points, the algorithm's joining them together into little triangles, and then you're mapping photos and normal maps onto that to make it look real. So there's a few kind of elements that are all working together to form the mesh.
That was like poetry. That was so beautiful. Is there anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think the interesting part about the process of using these meshes is that you can take them as they are in the form that they are as they're scanned, or if you make them yourself in modeling software, or you can deform them and use them in really various ways, which is a big part of our process. is taking a model. So April will sculpt some models in a very sacred piece of software she calls Putty. Well, it's called Putty on her iPad. It's just very rudimentary, but it's amazing, the results that come out. And it's a bit of sculpting software, so it's additive, and as you're sort of drawing over a shape, it's creating more faces. And then similarly, but differently with scans, it's doing that process by using sort of camera positions and pattern recognition around the object in order to resolve the shape. So one is additive sculpting, and it's sort of like, you know, you're painting on top of a surface as if you were adding clay to that surface, and that's resolving the mesh, the different points. And then with scanning, it's sort of doing that, but it's capture based. So it's really recognizing where you're taking all of these photos, which we'll get into.
Yeah, great. And I just remembered that I was asked if you could do a screen recording. If you want to. Oh, cool. You got that brief. Okay, awesome. So we have some show and share in what we call the waiting room, where we put assets before we bring them in to the project. Should we screen share this, or do you want to go in situ first? Okay, let's do that. So let's have a look at Kaju Yanaga. Is anyone familiar with Kaju Yanaga? The work? No. So we showed Kaju Yanaga at Melbourne International Film Festival at ACME last year, for Now or Never as well. That was the other festival. And it's 14 metres of screen surface, 2 channels, and had interactivity as well. So without going too much into this work, because that's probably another artist's talk, what you'll note in this scene, so this is showing the 2 different channels which form an L shape. So you can see that there's a vessel there with smoke coming out of it. So Kaju Yanaga means come on, let's walk together in Ewan, and we worked with Warren Foster Jr. and Warren Foster Sr. on this project as collaborators. And what we decided to do was that when the work began, that there would be a smoking vessel, and the figure, which we called the companion spirit, would walk through it at the very beginning. And we made the decision that wherever we showed the work, we would do a new photogrammetry scan, and we would work with a collaborator as like a host of place, just to make sure that the smoke felt right and all of the elements were there. So this work has already had 2 different smoking vessels, and we will be creating another one for a future presentation. So we worked with Dara on this one, and it was a wonderful, almost like sort of clay ceramic vessel, and it had metal legs. She also collected all of the leaves and placed them inside, and then we did a photogrammetry scan of that. So we've kind of got this wonderful digital echo or a replica in the work, and then there was some adjustments made to the scan as well, so that it would emit this wonderful kind of glowing light from within. So now we can probably just have a look at the raw asset. Is that what you wanted to do, or you want to talk about look to see first?
There are some assets as well. Because this is a big process, or part of our process is scanning. The other project that we have made, which was sort of an evolution, or a video-based sort of evolution spin-off, I guess, of this, is a work called Look to See. And it's a slow-moving, like 15-minute nature documentary style footage of the worlds that we've built. And again, there was an introduction of that. So you'll see some of the models. Maybe we can look at that a little later. But we've got, some more natural assets that April found in her whimsical backyard that we use. And it's really, just a quick note on this, like, once you get those models and you do those scans, you can manipulate them to do things. So we added wind into the leaves of the smoking object, so that the smoke that came out of it had a bit of caustics, or the glow, like April had said. So it's really cool that you can not just scan an asset, but play with things like scale, or color, or texture, or response within virtual environments. And we're using Unreal Engine to build these worlds. Unreal Engine purchased the scanning software that we are going to be using today, and a big part of their library, which is called Megascans, made by a studio called Quixel, which has like 14,000 assets in it, is all photoscan based assets. So a lot of our world building and a lot of the texturing and models that we'll use for stuff that isn't custom is also photoscanned assets that we're using to sort of build these worlds and make them feel tangible and a little real. So there's a really nice interplay with what we make, what we scan, the worlds that we're composing and compiling, and yeah, and they all work in tandem.
Let's have a look at Look to See first, I reckon, and then we can go to the waiting room and spend some time there. I think that's good. So this is Look to See, which was part of a MIF, Melbourne International Film Festival's summer residency, and then went on to be shown at the World Expo in Osaka at the Australian Pavilion on the external of the building. And yeah, what we did is we 3D scanned sticks. No one is more obsessed with sticks than me. And this stick has never been so seen in all its life. That's also a little leaf that I scanned, which has these gorgeous little eggs. So you can kind of see how much detail we have there. Are we able to scrub back on the stick just really quickly? Yeah, there we go. Give her a close up. It's one of those sticks where something's grown around it, and so then it's got this spiral, so it's like a magic wand. It's very beautiful. Oh, good. We can have a look at it in the waiting room. Yeah. Did you have something to add? Oh, you're getting excited about the stick. Yeah. So it's worth saying, you know, things like leaves, sticks, that they're things that you can just find and take. And I think that's also worth speaking to, that these scans are country, and I don't personally feel like it's appropriate to just take and use them without having a collaborator from place to guide you and to kind of, yeah, give permission, and also just working through what the license agreements look like for that. So I don't know, do we have the bundle in here as well? Okay, so you know, this is another one that we used for a smoking vessel. And so, you know, it's interesting when you're thinking about the contracting and how, you know, it's a license agreement and it's never forever. It should have a time-based term, there should be payments, and the reciprocity as well. So what happens with that file? How is it shared? Could it be used for other things? Is it part of collective learning and, I guess, yeah, understanding within technology and digital arts? And how can it, yeah, be part of keeping places as well? So all of these things have flow-on effects, and I'm very aware of the ethics and not just kind of taking. And all of these, oh yeah, you go through it because they're hollow. It's really funny. You go through them. So that's one of the smoking objects, and then we can see this one here. Wurundjeri from Melbourne. Mm-hmm.
And you can see here there's a little bit of that modification, so you can see the wind moving through those leaves. We were painting, because it's material-based adjustments, so the surface of the mesh is dynamically being altered in what we'd call shaders. What we did was we essentially painted on the model digitally where we'd want the wind to manipulate that shape, and then inside the material itself put like a noise function through it, similar to kind of what you guys did in Touch Designer, if anyone was at the symposium yesterday who was here today. That same sort of movement is what we're doing to then create this slight bit of wind, which then worked really nicely when we had the smoke through it.
And it captures a lot of detail, but it's also, yeah, placing it in the scene where it looks best as well. Okay, can we have a look at the stick now? Yeah. So here's the supermodel stick. And it's gorgeous. You see, you have shadows, you have all of the texture, and as the light source moves, you can really play with that, which is beautiful. Pat's really good with light.
It's even capturing that sort of the bumps and lumps on it, not just in the image, but as Jordan was saying, in those normal maps. Normal maps, because they tell a surface how light should function, you get really different and interesting results. Yeah.
Is the normal map texture again from the scan? Do you need really good lighting once you need that scan?
Is it made from the scan? Yes.
Sorry,
Yep.
so the scan provides you with the normal map?
Yes.
And do you need good lighting when you make that?
Yes. You just need good kind of global lighting, but we'll talk about that in the workshop too. Yeah. Is it easy to break it apart and see the wrap on it in this view? Maybe that's might answer that curiosity. And while you do that, I'll just speak to the shells that we can see as well. So these are the Xenophora, and we scanned these at the WA Museum stores and worked with the mollusks collection manager to gain access. So these are all shells, which, I don't know how much you know about Xenophora, but we've been kind of getting obsessed with them. They're carrier shells, and they journey through the water, find other shells, rocks or debris, and they cement it to themselves. So they are these kind of masters of camouflage, and they're really so individual, as you can see. Some of them are very neat, like this one, and they kind of take to the spiral and make everything very, very arranged and intentional. Others just seem to be a bit more loose and messy with it. And obviously responding to exactly where they are and what's around, really.
The fascinating thing as well is that scale is such a odd thing to perceive in these virtual environments, because the scale of these, do you want to talk about how small they were relevant to this world scale, which is kind of like a meter by a meter?
Yeah, I think the smallest one probably would have been about the size of a 50-cent piece or something, and then the biggest one maybe the size of a small orange. Yeah, so it is nice when you can kind of play with the scale once you have them in.
But also, the bigger the object, the more resolved the texture. So if you go around and, you can scan, in this process we'll discover that you can scan more than just things that are sort of handheld sized. You could also scan buildings if you had a drone, or a car if you walk around it. The resolution of the image and the texture is better the bigger the object and the more resolution you can capture on your phone. So what we're doing today is a pocket version of the process, but you could scale this up if you download the software on your laptop and go the full length and scan whole landscapes and environments and buildings. And this is kind of the pocket version of the process.
Do you want to talk about how you use them on film sets?
So second fiddle to Friends with Computers. I occasionally work on films as part of what's called a virtual art department. We take the sets that art department are designing and we put them into Unreal so that they can scout them virtually before we build them physically. But a big part of that is when we're building sets on locations, we need the landscape that the set is going to be built on, and so we'll have a location scout, go and fly a drone, scan the environment, and then we bring that back in as both a model that art department can then understand and build the landscape over, but also a thing called Gaussian splats, which is an evolution of this process. And maybe, Jody, you want to talk about what Gaussian splats have become, because that's...
There's a new process that's developed in the last couple of years called Gaussian splatting, and it's using the same process as photogrammetry. So you're taking 100, 200 photos of something, but instead of returning a mesh, which is the points in the triangles, you're turning Gaussians, which are just points, but the algorithm that calculates them also calculates their scale and their transparency. And you can actually create like lighting effects through that by having them kind of fade in and out. And yeah, people are starting to use them because they represent light a lot more accurately. You can get reflections. So something you'll find upstairs is that things with reflections don't really work that well in scanning, because you can't have a transparent depth to something that is like not transparent. So yeah, this is like the kind of evolution of this technology. You can see this vase at the front like has some kind of transparency. You can probably see the TV would have some kind of reflections. Not the most. Oh yeah, you can see that like. If you want to like pan back and forth on that TV, you can see it does kind of look like it has depth, but it's actually just a bunch of Gaussians that are further behind and are kind of tricking your mind or your eyes that it's got reflections in it. So yeah, this is a really interesting new technique that is still being developed, and a lot of software is kind of implementing it now. And if you like Touch Designer, it's really well supported by the kind of public open source projects. And yeah, there's some really amazing things you can do with that technology.
And the reality is, like, the process is the same, I guess, is the root of this. You're still going around taking photos from multiple angles, and the result you can get is different based on how it's processed. So this is it's a growing and present method of capturing data, objects, meshes, and the relationship they can have with your creative output is really kind of limitless. It's pretty fun.
And you can use the same photos for both, which is really cool. So even if you've taken them in a photo scanning app, you can just re-export the photos and then put them through a Gaussian splatting app. So yeah, it's good that you can do both because they do have different purposes.
Great. I might just do a little time check. Yeah, okay. So I think, is there anything else you wanted to touch on?
Should we show the scene? Do you want to?
Oh, for underwaters?
Yeah, cool. Let's open up. We're just going to quickly show you sort of the project scene of underwaters, which is upstairs. You will notice a lot of textural elements that maybe look realistic on objects that look very blobby, and that's kind of part of our creative process. But also we can show you how we lay out a lot of this stuff. So let me just open this up, show some lighting.
Yeah, might be good to see one unwrapped as well.
I've opened the texture. We can have a look at that in just a sec. Sorry, let me fly up here. The interesting thing about a lot of this stuff is it's quite spatial, and so sometimes your camera is just somewhere else and you have to find where you are. So let's do this and click this. Okay, so we'll go this way. So the start of the work will look something like this. It's also really bright. Let me just knock this back a tad. So the work is a slow push through this virtual environment. It sort of looks something like this, and as it moves through this space, you'll see shells that are embodied, and you are those shells. All of these textures, so the sand, the rock, they're all captured with photogrammetry through that library I was mentioning earlier, Megascans. But then in tandem is a lot of these fun blobby-shaped objects that April has amazingly made through putty that we've then textured and played with. You know, if I move a little further down the line, we have these, where are they? These little blue guys as well, another element where April had created this mesh, and then we had sort of given it PBR. Do you know what PBR translates to? It's like
physically based rendering.
Yeah. Basically, the process that we're capturing, the like photo and the normal map and a roughness map and all these things that help build texture, is by calculating light in a way that's more accurate to reality. So that's even with this object that doesn't have any photo scanning, it's still capturing light with things like what we call subsurface scattering. So when you see light cast through an object that's solid but not dense, like your skin when you see light through it, and you see that red glow. And so we're using a lot of these techniques that are adjacent to to photo-based capture when we're building these worlds, that all work in tandem to create something that feels somewhat realistic, somewhat, otherworldly, and helps tie in with something that we're talking about, which is more of a sort of spiritual journey or meditative journey. And in the work, we've integrated our Cinephora. So here we've got sort of a glowing emission that represents it, and it's part of some data that gets shown in the work that Jordan has collected as part of the process of collecting these shells through the Western Australia Museum's collection. And so when you experience the work, you'll catch a little point of seeing these shells and the data of where they were found and their latitude and longitude and their depth and what kind of soil or sediment they were found in. And it's all just working cohesively and texturally to create something that has an atmosphere that feels familiar. So, if I fly up, you'll notice it's like the world is not very extended beyond this little tube, this channel. Oh, and we've gone through the surface of the water. But yeah, it's amazing that you can take all of these elements, like these rocks that are on the side of the channel are scanned cliffs that are part of that collection that we just took, threw in, gave a little bit of a textural difference, added some foliage to. So there is a real sort of collaborative, open source sharing process to building this stuff, and all of it has sort of rooted out of this scanning, it's really like a gateway that's opened up for a lot of people. And the software used to be really expensive. You could scan for free, but to export it cost hundreds of dollars based on how dense the mesh was. So the more millions of polygons you had, the more expensive it was. And Epic Games, who make Unreal Engine, you might know them from Fortnite. They make Fortnite. They made all the money from Fortnite. They put it into this. They bought what used to be Reality Capture, called it Reality Scan, and basically made it free. So there's a lot of generosity and sharing that comes from the development of these softwares, and then using them is sort of pushing the technology forward. Gaussian splitting has come out of the fact that more people are using these kinds of scans in this process. So yeah, this is our world, and we build it very quickly and we sort of throw it together, but then we're manipulating it and working with it and trying to find something that feels harmonic to our aesthetics as artists who have different styles. April's aesthetic is so vibrant and fun and then approachable and elementary in color, and then has these blobby creatures with very illustrative looking designs, and interpreting them in an environment that has a lot of physical
photorealism.
Photoreal, yeah, we're trying to find the two. And so yeah, if I don't want to spoil too much, but I'm just going to scrub to one quick thing, which is this creature we fondly call the two-way snake. April had modeled this creature and had an idea of how it should move. We animated that creature, gave it a PBR, precision, physically based rendering texture. So it's got all these amazing ripples and lumps on it. We colored it, and then we added an animated eye to the front, eyes to the front and back. So as it swims through the scene, it pivots, it turns around, swims the other way with its other head on the back of it. And so yeah, it is.
Can we see the normal map? I wonder if we break this one down. It's a good one.
Yep, let me do that.
It's like unwrapping Easter eggs, when you have a look at what's wrapped around them.
Yep, so if I go to... So this is the actual texture itself that's patterned over it. This is something that April illustrated through Procreate. And the normal map looks something like this. It's a purple looking texture, and what it is the blue channel is sort of the base channel for how light hits it. The red and green channels determine where light hits the surface on the top and on its sides. So if you hide, I don't know, I guess I can't hide the blue channel, but you can see here, with the red channel on, you can see it almost looks like light is coming from the right side and not from the left side. And same with the green channel. It looks like light is coming from the bottom and not from the top. And so the light, the software tells the light how that works through these sort of dispersions and directions. This mesh, the UV, looks something like here's our snake.
Show them the bones.
We will see the bones. So I can select, it might be hard to see, they're sort of showing up as the same color, but you can see these little triangular rods through the middle of it. Each of them is a bone that we animate. So you do what's called skinning a mesh, which is you take a skeleton that you make out of these little bones here. Each of them can move independently, and you wrap that and say which faces of that mesh deform with which bones. And so if you evenly spread that mapping and you move those points around and the chain of those bones around, you get something like you saw with that snake that's sort of moving. Let me find that UV, because I know we were, that's, I think it's easier if I do this.
Does the texture deform at the junctions?
It does, yeah. There are a couple of methods of modeling. Some of them are like projection based. So if you've got an object that's a square or hard surfaces and you just want to slap on textures on the side, you can do what we call like triplanar, which is essentially, it's like if you had wallpaper and you just stuck the wallpaper to the side, and if you stretch that mesh, that wallpaper would grow or shrink in size, it wouldn't stretch. But in this instance, we are deforming the surface because we want it to feel like we can see it moving.
He's going fast.
Yeah, we animated fast and then we made him slow.
He's going somewhere. He's late.
Okay, I should be able to do it with this one. Okay, here we go. So you can see here, in this instance, our material, our UV is a tube. I wanted to make sure that the texture was tessellated on the top and the bottom, but you can kind of see all these triangulations. That is the surface of the skin. It almost looks like a snake skin. That's the surface of the skin, and that gray square is the texture that sits, or like the map in which the texture sits, and then I'm modifying that image into that position with scaling and that kind of thing. So if I click this might be a separate one. You can almost see here's a separate, these are called what we call UV channels. It's like how a texture wraps around an object. This instance is another UV channel on the same object if we wanted some variety. So if we wanted to try something different, like mapping a texture by putting it in the box and seeing what you would do if you project an image on the top and on the sides, it would give a different result. But in this instance, you can see the skin of the snake is along the bottom here. And I was sort of trying out some different things to see how the image would tessellate over the top of it.
Sort of like pattern pieces if you're making something, three-dimensional, and then they all kind of interlock, like a t-shirt, yeah. Yeah, I feel like we can go do some making now.